Today I'm going to give a speech on why you guys should all listen to Sia. Just kidding, no, just kidding. So I'm actually going to give a speech on human trafficking, which maybe I shouldn't joke about because it's a serious topic. But anyways, okay, so as of now, human trafficking has evolved into the second most profitable crime industry in the world. Last time I gave a really complex definition, so this time I thought I would try to simplify that a little bit. Let's see. Okay. I'll continue with that. So in my speech today, I'm going to describe the effectiveness of current global anti-trafficking legislation, the lack of global anti-trafficking laws, and the pandemic nature of trafficking, as well as why the global community should adopt anti-trafficking laws similar to the laws of the United States. First, let's discuss issues surrounding human trafficking. So the definition given by the Protocol to Prevent, Suppress, and Punish Trafficking in Persons defines trafficking as, quote, persons as modern-day slavery which involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act, end quote. It's important to understand that trafficking not only takes the form as sexual slavery, but also as forced harvesting of organs, forced labor in general, and present-day anti-trafficking laws put in place around the world lack effectiveness. They often go unenforced, and many of them lack the sustenance to put traffickers behind bars. Not only has human trafficking evolved into the second most profitable crime industry in the world, it has also reached unprecedented rates. According to a statistic published by the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, quote, about 2,200 people each day are trafficked across international borders, which would equate to just over 91 people every hour, close quote. Without factoring in the many other forms of human trafficking can take, sexual exploitation of individuals brings in a staggering $100 billion in annual profits each year. In developed countries, involuntary laborers can be worth almost $35,000 a year to employ exploiters, which may suggest why this industry has grown so exponentially. I would ask the question, if global laws currently put in place were effective, would rates of human trafficking have been allowed to reach such heights? This may be due to the fact that out of the 155 countries surveyed by the United Nations Interagency Project on Human Trafficking, quote, only 63% of the governments have passed laws against trafficking, close quote. Therefore, not only is there a general lack of anti-trafficking legislation, there's also a failure of current legislation to work the way that it was originally designed. Many people feel that human trafficking is not a global problem. However, I would argue that it has become a worldwide pandemic. Even as global officials have become more aware of trafficking, the crime remains the fastest growing criminal activity in the world. Since criminals feel that trafficking has high profits and low risks, many of those who function as traffickers come from other sectors of organized crime with the hopes of easier profits. Human trafficking is a disgusting crime, motivated by the inhumane treatment of victims. It completely dehumanizes those who are exploited by it. Trafficking comes in many forms, as I mentioned, such as forcing victims into prostitution, subjecting victims to slavery and forced labor, or compelling victims to commit sex acts for the purpose of creating pornography. The website Equality Now provides narratives from victims who have survived sex trafficking, as well as resources for those who would like to know more about sex trafficking or those who are seeking to escape it. The following is a narrative from a woman named Aisha, who was sold by her husband into sex trafficking in India. Quote, to break me in, I was raped several times a night for nearly a month before the madam started selling me to men for money. It was typical for me to have 10 to 12 buyers every night. They were usually abusive, treating me as if they owned my body. I have a deep scar on my neck from a knife blade, which I got trying to save a young girl in my house from being gang raped. It almost killed me. I tried to leave that dungeon many times. Memories still flash in my mind of my hair being pulled, of being dragged through the dirt streets by the brothel owner after a failed escape. Even though I cried, screamed for someone to help me, people just stood by watching without even a look of sympathy. Tears stream down my face as I think back to that day. Even one man had tried to save me. If even one man had tried to save me, my life would have been changed. But all of them stood there like mute spectators. When people tell me that women choose this life, I can't help but laugh. Do they know how many women like me have tried to escape but have been beaten black and blue when they are caught? To the men who buy us, we are like meat. To everybody else in society, we simply do not exist. Close quote. With a substantial lack not only of anti-trafficking laws in general around the globe, but also lack of quality laws, I offer the solution that the global community should adopt anti-trafficking laws similar to those of the United States. According to a statistic published by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, quote, the FBI's human trafficking investigations have been responsible for the arrest of more than 2,000 traffickers over the past decade, as well as the recovery of numerous victims, close quote. The US government has also secured convictions against 184 traffickers in 2014, compared with 174 convictions in 2013, according to FBI statistics, which would suggest that laws are working effectively and gaining momentum each year. Since the legislation in the United States has apprehended a considerable amount of traffickers, nations who adopt similar laws would conceivably have less instances of trafficking. Victims of trafficking are relying on their governments to save them from being enslaved. Victims of and it is up to government officials to ensure that quality legislation is being passed on behalf of their citizens. The United States laws function as a tried and proven model for other governments' anti-trafficking laws. In conclusion, the global community should adopt anti-trafficking laws similar to the United States. At the 13th United Nations Congress on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon gave a speech in which he said, quote, human trafficking is one of the world's most shameful ills, a heartless violation of human rights in which lives are traded, sold, exploited, abused, and ruined. No country is immune and millions of lives are at stake, close quote. Human trafficking has reached never-before-seen rates, and many foreign governments lack the necessary legislation to protect victims. The United States government has laid the picture-perfect groundwork for other countries to follow in their paths by adopting similar anti-trafficking laws, and therefore sending the message to victims of human trafficking living within their borders that they care. It is our responsibility as global citizens to be aware of atrocities taking place around us. Resources such as equalitynow.com, traffickingresourcecenter.org, and the FBI's webpage on human trafficking provide a lot of information on this atrocity. I challenge you to continue educating yourselves on events surrounding human trafficking and to speak out against it. Thank you.
All right, comments?